on the modern period, from the time of 1900 to today. This particular video is looking at the characteristics and features of the modern period. This is the final period we look at in the People's Health exam. So, the people looking at you from this photograph lived in East London around 1900. This photograph was taken by John Galt, a Christian missionary and photographer. Galt showed images like this to middle-class audiences at slide shows known as magic lantern shows. He knew that the great improvements in public health at the end of the 19th century had not reached everyone in Britain. He wanted to show the middle classes that those living in older houses in poorer districts, problems of dirt and disease were still as bad as ever. So, despite all the progress that was made towards the end of the industrial period in the previous century, they still had enormous challenges to face in the improvements of public health care. So, for instance, we know that John Snow helped to discover disease alongside Louis Pasteur. So there was an improvement in terms of the Public Health Act at the end of the industrial period in terms of waste and water, but housing and food and various other parts of public health had not been improved yet. So this period is a period of change, but we're going to look at who is responsible for these changes. Could improvements still be made at all? And if so, how? And who's going to pay the costs of improving housing and food, etc., for everybody in Britain, not just the upper classes? So let's look at modern Britain then. This should be the easiest of all overviews because we actually live in 2023, so not long after the year 2000. We're going to look at the changing points during the modern Britain. So a key point here is the 20th century was a time of great change. Okay, if you think back to the beginning of the century, okay, Britain in 1900 to Britain in 2000 or even today, this period of 100 years is massive changes. So for instance, here there's 2 world wars that go on, okay, and then there's the advancement in technology, etc. So across this period, massive change. So let's start by looking at beliefs and values and what's changed in terms of the 100 years. So at the beginning of the more modern period, majority of people still go to church and 55% of children still attend Sunday school. So church is still really important to society. Okay, some believe in science early on, but some people are still sceptical. And the horrors of World War I created religious doubt for many. So because of World War I in 1914 to 1918, some people kind of lost their way with their faith. So we've got church being really important at the beginning of the 1900s. Let's look closer to today then. So in 1948, the Human Rights Declaration stopped government from ignoring their needs. So now we've got human rights becoming more important as a value in society. So human rights includes everybody in every class. And then just comparatively look, in 2001, 70% of people considered themselves Christian, but only now 10% go to church. We've had a massive drop in the amount of people going to church. More people now turn to science than prayer to deal with any major problems. So in terms of health problems, we're now turning to science over prayer and faith. So that's belief and values. Government and welfare then. Okay, so in 1880s, okay, just before the start of this period, most people over the age of 21 had the right to vote. Okay, so men have got the right to vote. Governments needed to do more to meet the needs of people if they were going to get their support and votes. Free school meals and state-funded pensions were introduced to make it more comfortable for people living in poverty. So we've got free school meals coming in. This is the beginning of the 1900s. Okay, then it says here, women gained the right to vote in 1918. Okay, so at the end of the period, it was just men. Now, in this period, the modern period, women now get the right to vote, so they can have a say on living conditions, etc. Labour government spent increased spending on the welfare state, but Conservatives tried to cut the cost. However, all governments were involved than they had ever been in looking after people's needs. So around 2000, because we've got the introduction of the NHS, etc. Okay, government now, for the first time in the whole of history, are doing the most they've ever done for everybody's needs. And this includes the welfare state. So this was the beginning of the welfare state, where the government used taxpayers' money to support the whole society, especially the most vulnerable. So now people are paying a tax. Okay, the key's in the name, welfare, looking after the welfare of other people. Okay, so they all paid a tax, which went into the welfare state, which then went into improving things like living conditions for everybody. Okay, and public health. So that's the government and the welfare state. More people can vote, and the government is having more of an involvement. Okay, people and population. This is quite astounding. So in 1900s, we've got 37 million people in this population. In the year 2000, we've got 58 million, so rapid growth. Okay, half of people lived in cities, but farming was still important just before World War One. Okay, cities now have a wider mix of ethnic groups living in Britain. So we've got a change in the people that are living in Britain. So let's look at Britain in 1900. Trains allowed food and people to be transported at speed. So we've got now speed across the country. And in 1901, tractors were invented, and this meant less labourers were needed. So less people were needed to work on farms. So let's have a look. The growth of population led to the growth in a number of jobs. So more people, more jobs were needed. It also put extra demands on the welfare state. So the welfare state, as mentioned before, was there to help people and their living conditions and live a happy, healthy life. However, because there's extra people, it means the welfare, the government have to pay out more money to help people. Okay, another reason was divorces were becoming more common, meaning families were made up of single parents, and that could cause some financial issues. Science and technology then. We know that this is a period of massive technology. We know from living in this period ourselves. Okay, so in 1896, Parliament allowed the first cars on the road with a speed limit of 14 miles an hour. Okay, moving pictures were shown for the first time, so films in Britain, and ideas and people could now move around more easily. It's kind of the start of the social media and messages getting around even easier. Okay. So let's have a look at Britain 2000. The world has been transformed by technology, don't we know it? Antibiotics have been created, which quickly end many infections that were once fatal. We've got a new understanding of genes. Cars and aeroplanes, compared to here, okay, are now allow people to move faster, and humans are now going into space, so the speed limit is increased. Cars are becoming better developed. Computers and communication devices are developed, so the first phones, the first computers. These inventions do make life easier, but they also make life more deadly. For instance, cars going faster on roads can lead to more accidents. So science and technology is good in one way, not so in another. Work and wealth then. Okay, let's have a look at what we were working. In terms of 1900s, most people were working with their hands, doing labouring jobs like coal mining. Textiles were being sold by the British Empire around the world. It was unusual for married women to work. Wives generally stayed at home and looked after the children. For most hours were long, wages were low, so people weren't paid very well. So this industrial working kind of carried on really just before the war. Most people lived in poor quality housing, as I mentioned earlier. Workers tried to improve their living conditions with trade unions. So we skip 100 years forward. Let's have a look. So the welfare state was brought in 1906 and paid for pensions and other benefits for workers. Education improved for all. Okay, middle class Britain was growing. After 1950, jobs in coal mining and factories declined because they started to close the coal mines. So more jobs were linked to service industries. So more people were eating out, tourism, education, healthcare. So lots of variety of jobs. Okay, less physical labour. Okay, and now we're seeing a change in women. Women are staying at home less and going out to work more. So quite the change in work and wealth. Okay, so finally, on our overview of the modern period, let's look at leisure and lifestyle. What do they do for fun and how has this changed? The average worker, okay, 1900 works 54 hours a week, which is a long week. Saturday afternoons they'd have off, and Sunday they'd have off. Leisure hours, what they would do in that spare time, they go to the pub, football, walking or working on an allotment, quite physical activities, which was good for their health. Life involves a lot more exercise. People walked more from place to place, partly because they couldn't afford a car and relied less on cars. Right, let's have a look. So the average worker now, today, or in 2000, worked for 39 hours a week, so quite a substantial amount less hours a week. Leisure hours now include films, travelling, new sports, watching TV, playing on your phone. Okay, we all know what we do in leisure time now. The problem with this is we're doing less exercise than we've ever done before, which can lead to health problems. So let's really summarise that then into science and technology. Okay, society and technology, sorry. Society, life expectancy's gone up. Okay, we've got more variety of jobs. Everybody now, okay, over the age of 15 can vote. Less people are going to church. We still have a comprehensive welfare state. Okay, our government still looks after everybody's needs. Leisure hours are more inside than they were outside. Okay, playing on phones. Most people own a car now. Air travel is becoming more common, and electricity is in almost everybody's home. Okay, so have a go at these questions. Have you been listening? Can you answer them?